The European colonization of the Americas describes the history of the settlements and of the control by European naval powers in the new continent. Systematic European colonization began in 1492, when a Spanish expedition headed by the Italian explorer Christopher Columbus sailed west to find a new trade route to the Far East, but inadvertently landed in what came to be known to Europeans as the New World. Colonization led to the death of millions of indigenous people and the destruction of their culture. Mercantilism was the basic policy imposed on British colonies, which meant that the government became a partner with merchants based in England. The government protected its London-based merchants and kept out others. Trade barriers, regulations, and subsidies to domestic industries were used to maximize exports from the realm and minimize imports. The government also fought smuggling. With the Navigation Acts, this included direct trade with the French, Spanish, Dutch, and Portuguese. The goal of mercantilism was to run trade surpluses so that gold and silver would pour onto London. The government took its share through duties and taxes, with the remainder going to merchants in Britain. The government spent much of its revenue on a superb Royal Navy, which protected the British colonies and also threatened the colonies of the other empires. Havana was founded on August 25, 1515. Havana began as a trading port and suffered regular attacks by buccaneers, pirates, and corsairs. The Spanish crown ordered the construction of fortresses in the main cities. Ships from all over the New World carried products first to Havana in order to be taken by the fleet to Spain. Later on, the Spanish crown would officially designate the city as key to the New World and rampart of the West Indies. Havana expanded greatly in the 17th century. New buildings were constructed from the most abundant materials of the island. Wood combining various Iberian architectural styles, as well as borrowing profusely from Canarian characteristics. By the middle of the 18th century, Havana was the third largest city in the Americas and was the most important of the Spanish ports. The British captured the city during the 7 Years' War, June 6, 1762. Colonial architecture is an architectural style from a mother country that has been incorporated into the buildings of settlements or colonies in distant locations. Colonists frequently built settlements that synthesized the architecture of their countries of origin with the design characteristics of their new lands, creating hybrid designs. By the early 1600s, the towns were planned based on the laws of the Indies. Many towns and cities still clearly reveal the street grid, central plaza, and a church. Spanish settlements and related architecture can be classified as three distinct types or functions. First, pueblos or civic town settlements. Second, presidios or fortified military bastions. And third, missions, original churches designed to promote the Catholic faith to Native Americans. Local building materials, especially adobe, and simplified Baroque style features. Spanish colonists relied on the single-story adobe structures with generally flat roofs and parapets. Residential buildings called placitas, courtyard houses, were typically one-story tall with flat roof and adobe construction. Vigas, protruding wooden beams, are usually visible extending out from the roofline, and any portales, porches, would be supported with thick wooden columns and zapata capitals, carved wooden capitals atop the columns. Spanish churches generally included features derived from the Spanish Baroque period. Elaborate facades with round arches, domes, and niches for statuary, prominent belfries or bell towers, curved parapets, and typically symmetrical facades. The town of Nassau was founded in 1670 by British noblemen. They built a fort and named it Charlestown in honor of England's King Charles II. In 1684 the town was burned to the ground and it was rebuilt in 1695 and renamed Nassau in honor of William of Orange. He belonged to a branch of the House of Nassau. Lacking effective governors after Trott, Nassau fell on hard times. Thomas Walker was the island's last remaining appointed official, and he was the deputy governor upon Benjamin Honeygold's arrival in 1713. By this time, the city had become a pirate haven known as the New Providence. They proclaimed Nassau a pirate republic, recognizing the island's prosperous state in which it offered fresh fruit, meat, and water, and plenty of protection amid its waterways. In 1718, the British sought to regain control of the islands and appointed Captain Woodes Rogers as royal governor. He successfully clamped down on the pirates, reformed the civil administration, and restored commerce. In 1776, the Battle of Nassau resulted in a brief occupation during the American War of Independence by the Marines. Indigenous people. Even if Norse expeditions arrived in Canada and Greenland, the process of colonization truly began with the Europeans. They started conquering the Americas in search of gold and treasures, to impose their religion to the native people, and to enrich their mother country. As a result, by the mid-16th century, the Spanish crown had gained control of territories in South America, North America, and Caribbean. England and France succeeded in establishing permanent colonies in the following century. Unfortunately, this period is not remembered for scientific discoveries and development, but for the huge impact it had on the native civilizations that already inhabited the Americas. Europeans imposed their culture and religion. Many colonists went to the Americas searching for the right to practice their religion without persecution, and those who didn't accept relationships with the Europeans were either killed or enslaved. Europeans caused the indigenous peoples genocide, even in indirect ways. While expanding their territories, they also spread diseases that didn't exist in America. Needless to say, Europeans also got ill because of the new diseases they found. In the 1500s, when Spanish conquistadors appeared, two vast empires, those of the Aztecs and the Incas, dominated Central and South America. Mayas had built some of the ancient buildings. Although there were differences, they were united by common cultural traits: sun worship, twin calendars of 260 and 365 days, and ritual murder to their gods. And all built their palaces and pyramids using the labor of their people. None had domesticated animals or the use of the wheel. Slavery. With the amount of work that had to be done, moving goods to trade, cultivating the plantations, cooking and cleaning, Europeans started colonizing the coasts of Africa. They also kidnapped people with the purpose of enslaving them and making them do the heavy job. Enslaved people in South America constituted about 1/3 of the population. Slave owners sought to make their enslaved completely dependent on them. They were usually prohibited from learning to read and write, their behavior and movement was restricted, and marriages were not legally recognized. Many masters took sexual liberties with enslaved women and rewarded obedient behavior with favors, while rebellious enslaved people were brutally punished. A strict hierarchy among the enslaved, from privileged house workers and skilled artisans down to field hands, helped keep them divided and less likely to organize a rebellion against their masters. After the American Revolution, many colonists, particularly in the North where slavery was relatively unimportant to agricultural economy, began to link the oppression of enslaved Africans to their own oppression by the British, and to call for the abolition of slavery.
Excellent. Put the crates down there, chers messieurs. All right, enough socializing. Back to work. Grounds must be fit for a king when my guests arrive. Easy bastards. Both of them should be whipped. I'm a prince, you realize? I'm a prince for putting up with it.
This vessel is available. Could we not use a French ship?
Are you trying to start a war? The treaty between our nations is fragile. We cannot afford any suspicion of smuggling.
Your name will go down in history with mine if you supply the funds and the ship.
Thank you for the offer, but I have an expensive colony to govern.
With the volume of slaves you import, I'd have thought you'd have gold to spare.
Even free labor is not free, my friend. Slaves are expensive to replace. The poor beasts expire before they can reproduce.
Even your slave ships would benefit from improved navigation. Fewer accidents.
Now that is interesting. Go! Go!
Who will come to your rescue? Your slaves? The overseers who follow your orders? Pathetic. What kind of man does not fight for himself? Why? I have killed many men on principle, but never have I wanted one to suffer as much as you. To understand what it is to gasp and beg for your life, like the innocents you drowned.
You mean those slaves? That ship? But they're not even human. Without the discipline and guidance of their masters, they turn to rebellion. Murder. Like you.
I only wish that were true.